Growing up with an alcoholic parent doesn't just impact one area of your life, it impacts every aspect: your relationships, your work, school, your sense of self, your body, your mind, your behaviors, and even the goals that you chase. And unless you've lived through this experience, it really is extremely difficult to understand it. I'm Corey. I'm a trauma informed mind body practitioner, and I work with adult children of alcoholics. But most importantly, I am the daughter of an alcoholic myself. I've always had an alcoholic parent, and for as long as I remember, my home life has always been completely unpredictable. Living with someone who suffers from alcoholism is like living with Jekyll and Hyde. You never know what version of that person that you're going to get, because for so many of us as children of alcoholics, our experience is not always bad. Our parent may actually not always be drinking or be drunk. So you're constantly faced day to day with this uncertainty of, am I going to get the sober version of my parent today, or am I going to get the scary drunk version? And as a result of this, I spent my whole childhood living in a state of hypervigilance, feeling like I was constantly on edge, waiting for that next bad thing to happen. And alongside this constant state of fear that I carried, and this constant feeling of being on edge and never really fully being able to relax in the moment and relax in the presence of life, I was so angry. I was so angry at my parent and at the pain that they were causing me, the pain they were inflicting on my wider family, and also the pain they were inflicting on themselves. Watching your parent slowly destroy themselves and knowing that you can't do anything about it no matter how hard you try, because I know so many of us as children of alcoholics, we really go into that like fixer character, and we really want to fix our parent. And the anger and the frustration and the rage that comes with that experience of not being able to fix them, and of watching them and being so desperate and begging them to change their behavior, but they don't and they can't, creates a lot of anger in a child who doesn't fully understand the why behind the alcoholism. When I was a child, I did not understand that my parents' drinking was driven by something deeper, like a real deep pain that they were trying to escape from. I just thought that they drank because they liked drinking and they liked inflicting pain on us and they liked making our lives difficult and being this scary figure in our lives. I didn't fully understand that the deeper why and the deeper meaning was because they were trying to escape their own pain. By my teenage years, I didn't know how to manage all this rage and anger that I had towards my parent. And I felt it so intensely that I actually started to become scared of it. I started to become scared of myself and of these big, scary emotions that I was never shown how to deal with. In a home with an alcoholic parent, emotions are never usually expressed or managed or felt in a healthy way. So instead of knowing or having a support system to lean on to help me manage these big, scary emotions like anger and rage, I started to suppress them instead. I started to stuff them down and try and ignore them and block them out so that I didn't have to deal with them on a daily basis. But unfortunately, when you shut off painful emotions like anger or rage or frustration, you don't get to choose the emotions that you shut off. You shut off your full emotions, all the ones like happiness and fulfillment, joy and contentment. So then I went through my 20s doing anything I could to fill the emptiness that was created by me suppressing my emotions, to fill this void that I knew I was feeling, but didn't really truly fully understand what it was. So I started abusing substances. I started heavily abusing alcohol and drugs. I got completely addicted to online shopping because that satisfaction and that joy that gave me of like waiting for my order to arrive and receiving it allowed me to feel the emotions that I had unintentionally shut off. And I constantly needed to distract myself. I couldn't ever be still. I couldn't ever be by myself. I needed this constant churn of busyness throughout my 20s to help me feel some sort of safety, to help me feel some sort of worthiness. And everything looked perfect on the outside. Like you would never have guessed or understood that I was experiencing these things if you were someone looking from the outside in. But inside, I was completely anxious. I was so disconnected from myself and my true self. And I was mentally exhausted. By the end of my 20s, by the time I was like 27, 28, my mental health was really, really bad. I woke up every morning in tears and I couldn't understand why. I had the worst migraines. I had such bad insomnia, really bad gut issues, really bad chest pains and palpitations that sent me to the doctor on numerous times because I thought I was having a heart attack. And just this constant state of anxiety. I was so anxious all the time. And of course, my lifestyle up until this point certainly did not help. Like going out at the weekend and drinking and partying for 48 hours straight did not help the anxiety that I was feeling, did not help how stressed my mind and my body were. And it only came to a point when I started hearing my parents shouting and fighting when they wouldn't be. And this really, really scared me. And this is what kind of started the cascade for me to really seek external professional help. I started my healing journey with talk therapy, and it was the most amazing space for me to be able to finally go and open up to someone about my parents drinking. Like, up until this point, I told no one that I had an alcoholic parent. And after some time with talk therapy, I did start to feel lighter. I started to be able to lean into vulnerability a little bit more and not be so scared to open up and talk to my romantic partner, for example, about the issues I was facing from having an alcoholic parent. I still felt like something was missing. I still had crippling anxiety on a daily basis. I was still ruining my romantic relationship with my emotional reactivity. And I still felt like I was missing the happiness that I was so desperate to feel on a regular basis. And that's when I decided to start exploring a more holistic approach. I took the tools that I learned from talk therapy and started to introduce things like meditation, yoga, breath work, journaling. And I started to remove the things that were no longer serving me, like alcohol and using drugs on a regular basis. And gradually, things actually started to shift for me. I would wake up in the morning and not always feel that sense of dread that I was feeling. Or throughout my week or my day, I would actually start to feel like little glimmers of happiness. My emotions started to become less scary and more manageable. And I actually started to stick to the healthy habits and routines that I had been trying to implement for a very, very long time, but was never able to stick to them. And at the time, I didn't understand why these things were helping. I just knew that they were. And this really piqued my curiosity. Like, why now, after taking what I learned in talk therapy and stacking it up with some holistic tools and a holistic approach, why now am I starting to feel better? And that really sent me down a bit of a rabbit hole of trying to understand, well, how does growing up in an environment that's chaotic and unpredictable with a parent who's suffering from alcoholism, like, how does that actually truly impact us? And this is when I started to understand and discover the nervous system, cortisol, and our survival response. I started to see the deeper why behind all of the horrible symptoms and behaviors and experiences that I was dealing with. And I started to understand the why behind why yoga and meditation and breath work was actually starting to help me and make me feel better. And from there, everything clicked. Because when we grow up in a chaotic, unpredictable home, our body perceives danger. Even if that danger is not always physical, our nervous system perceives that this chaos and unpredictability is a threat to our sense of safety and activates our survival response. This means that our bodies start to flood with stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, and we're constantly prepared to fight, flight, or freeze. But when that threat is ongoing, like it is in the home with an alcoholic parent, our nervous system never fully gets the opportunity to switch off, to come back to a state of balance and a state of regulation. So, over time, that dysregulated nervous system, the constant flood of stress hormones pumping through our body, the constant state of chronic stress becomes our baseline. It actually starts to become our normal. And that's when we start to experience different mental, physical, and behavioral symptoms. We can feel anxious, on edge, agitated, shut down, unable to deal or manage our emotions, gut issues, hormone imbalances, autoimmune diseases, insomnia, having a constant churn of stress hormones pumping through your body over a long period of time is what starts to cause illness in the body. And when I learned this, everything started to make sense. I looked back through my whole childhood, my teenage years, my 20s, and I could feel myself in that constant heightened state of dysregulation. I could feel my nervous system being in that constant fight or flight mode. And I started to realize that, well, maybe the way I've been behaving and feeling and showing up in the world is not because I'm broken, is not because there's something wrong with me. It's actually because my body is having a very natural response to a situation and an environment that it perceives as threatening to my sense of self, sense of safety. And honestly, that understanding was a turning point for me because it allowed me to start approaching my own healing journey and the healing journey of my alcoholic parent with more compassion and empathy and less judgment and criticism towards myself. And this is what has led me into the work I do today. This is what has led me to become a mind body practitioner. Understanding that having an alcoholic parent impacts the full person. It impacts your mind, your body, your soul, your behaviors, all the choices that you make in life. It doesn't just impact one area. And that is why, for me, it is so, so important that while talk therapy is a fantastic resource and very much needed for children of alcoholics, that we also have an understanding of how the body is brought into this and how the body is impacted, and then how that impact is having an ongoing impact in our lives on a much larger scale than we actually truly realize. Through my own experience and through my experience of now working with other children of alcoholics, I can really clearly see of how much there is still a big gap in Ireland and in the rest of the world when it comes to change and support for children of alcoholics. And honestly, there is so, so much I would change at a social level if I could. Like for me, I went through my whole life suffering from this alone, feeling like I had nowhere to turn to. And even in times where I was so desperate and I did turn to the helplines that were out there, I still never felt truly understood or like they really got what I was going through. So if I could change a couple of things at a social and a policy level, it would be this: supporting and equipping teachers with the ability to recognize and also lean into difficult conversations with children about their parents' alcoholism is going to make a massive difference in the lives of especially younger children. Like for me, I was an absolute terror in secondary school. I was constantly being suspended, and never did anyone ask me, is there a reason why you're acting out like this? Is there a reason why you've gone from being a really top student to now being an absolute torment? And that's not blame on the teachers. It's not blame on the schools. They're not equipped and they don't have the support that they need to be able to hold this space for children who are suffering. They need government led support because 1 in 6 children are impacted by parental drinking. That is a huge number of children in our schools across Ireland. And unfortunately, the teachers in the schools cannot do this themselves. They need support at a higher level. I would introduce mandatory training for frontline workers. So, our frontline workers being social workers, therapists, healthcare staff, and even the police, because they often encounter people who have grown up in the home with an alcoholic parent. And probably most likely they are met with defensiveness, a lack of respect for authority, anger, bad attitude, and not fully understanding why or where that person is coming from. How is their survival response controlling how they're showing up? And it's not about putting the responsibility on these frontline workers to heal children of alcoholics. That's not what it's about. It's about giving them a deeper level of understanding of why these people may be showing up and acting the way that they are, so that they can be met with a bit more compassion and understanding. Because the stats show that only about 24% of our mental health workers actually ask about parental alcohol abuse. And 70% of them don't actually have any training in this area. And lastly, it's just about continuing the public campaigns and initiatives like Silent Voices. Alcoholism in Ireland is still surrounded by shame and stigma. We still have people who say, oh yeah, but aren't they a functioning alcoholic? But let me tell you, there is nothing functioning about an alcoholic, because what you see on the outside is a very, very different story to what actually happens behind closed doors. The more we continue to speak openly about this massive, massive problem in our society, the more the shame will start to dissolve. Because shame really does die when stories are told in safe spaces. The amazing Brene Brown says that all the time. And what is fantastic is that Silent Voices is providing this exact space. Alcoholism is not this moral failing or something to be ashamed about. It's pain. It's people trying to cope in the only way that they know how, with this deep, deep level of pain that they're dealing with. But when society continues to ignore this pain, this is when the cycle continues. And when alcoholism, addiction, trauma is continually passed down from parent to child, from parent to child. Healing from a parent's drinking, it takes time, it takes support, and it takes compassion, both from a personal and a societal level. So if you grew up in an environment like mine that was completely chaotic and that has caused you now to feel, act, and behave in a way that you may not be proud of, I want you to know that you are not broken. There is a deeper underlying why to how you show up in the world today. And if you are ready to take the first step in your healing journey, I really encourage you to visit the Silent Voices website. They'll have a vault of resources over there that are completely safe, easy to understand, and most importantly, will help you realize that you are not alone on this journey.